People's purchasing power has been eroded so much by central banks, governments like the Justin Trudeau government, like the Biden government. These governments essentially mean that we pay more and more in terms of an inflation tax, because inflation is essentially just a tax. The economy is a casino, and I'm stood here right by one of the biggest casinos in Las Vegas, Caesars Palace. But the housing market in Canada is pretty much a casino, exactly like many of the casinos that people come to play in here in Las Vegas. The thing is, the parallels that you can draw between gambling, the stock market, the housing market is unbelievable. Here in Las Vegas, millions of people descend on the city to gamble, and they know what they're doing. But when people buy a home, they don't ever think that they're gambling. You see, buying a home, it seems like a normal purchase. It seems like something that you're just gonna do. But the thing is, what happens is the bubble just becomes normalized, and people just believe housing prices are gonna go up at this infinite rate forever. They move all their chips into the middle of the table, and we have seen a casino environment in the housing market. You know, I have said many times different housing markets in Canada, particularly smaller housing markets, and I've seen it because I've just driven across 5 states here in America, and I look up on Zillow all these different little areas, and home prices have doubled. So many people moved out of the cities and into these smaller areas, and what happened was they drove up the price of the homes in those areas. But now they're getting called back to the office, things are changing. Obviously the work from home is not what it once was. So basically you have all these different people that are essentially now moving back to the city. They want to sell their homes, and the problem is they're not going to be able to do it, especially selling it onwards to somebody who lives in one of these local towns, because the thing is, these local neighborhoods, they're really small areas, and the people, the incomes just cannot be justified in these housing markets. We've seen over the past couple of years, essentially it has just turned into a casino. The housing market, stock market, it has just essentially turned into this casino. And when you have this casino environment, people tend to think that they're invincible. They cannot lose. It's real estate. It only goes up. And if I just justify it with whatever story I want to justify it with, I mean, I was just in St. George speaking to somebody, and I was saying, you know what? Home prices have doubled here over the past 3 years. Do you not think that's weird? And the guy said to me, well, lots of people are retiring. That trend is only just going to continue. And I'm thinking, really? You think that's going to continue in a recession? More and more people are going to be retiring? That's not going to happen at all. You see, the environment that was brought on was unique, very unique in 2020, 2021, because there wasn't necessarily a financial catalyst that happened. It was the pandemic catalyst that sent governments on their money printing spree that we saw. And I say that quote unquote money printing because it's not really money printing, it's credit creation, and they literally forced the banks to lend at all costs. So the banks, they went out and they lent at all costs. And the result of lending at all costs means that banks have to take on extreme amounts of risk. They've been lending lots in the mortgage markets. This is exactly what the Bank of Canada and the government wanted them to do. And some of the unintended consequences of the government and the Bank of Canada dropping interest rates low. So you saw this housing market that operated like a casino. You saw all these people getting. I even see the hysteria right now in Calgary, and the same thing's happening in certain places in the US right now. They're still going up in price, and people think, oh, it's less price than these bigger markets that are going down, so I can't lose. I mean, people go into these markets, they come up with all kinds of excuses and ideas of why they're just going to continue to go up in price forever. It's just absolutely insane to believe that. I mean, the population growth argument that is given time and time again in Canada makes no sense. I mean, think about it. You're literally saying, okay, population growth is going to mean that home prices are going to go up. Well, that only makes sense if incomes are rising. How can you justify higher prices? You might have a supply shortage in a tight market, but if incomes aren't growing enough, home prices shouldn't be rising in that environment, even with high population growth, because essentially the income growth isn't there. So how are people buying these properties? A lot of this is speculation on the population growth that drives people into the real estate market. People's purchasing power has been eroded so much by central banks, governments like the Justin Trudeau government, like the Biden government. These governments essentially mean that we pay more and more in terms of an inflation tax, because inflation is essentially just a tax. You're just being taxed more through inflation. And the thing is, that's what we get taxed at. This inflation is 2% per year. Think about how much your purchasing power is declining over your lifetime. It is insane. So it's no wonder that you see people doing stupid things with their money, going into these random cryptos, which most of them are just Ponzi schemes, trying to make money, trying to become a millionaire, because 1 in 3 million gets rich off it. People just have this insane reality. And you know, it's kind of funny because every time I come to Vegas, I win in the casinos because I use probabilities, whereas most people just play with their emotions. Now, gambling is a very, very dangerous game, but I know that gambling is very much similar to trading, and it's a fine line essentially between gambling and trading. Professional gambling is essentially just using probabilities, the same as trading. Most people lose in trading as well. Most people lose when they gamble. But it's just funny because people get all emotional when they're on a winning streak. They think that they're invincible and they can't lose, and you know, that's when you can beat them easier. Bringing it back to the economy and the housing market, people's purchasing power has essentially declined so much that they're just looking for this get rich quick scheme. They're just hoping, oh, if I just buy this home, gonna double, gonna triple in value, and I'm gonna be set for my life. I'm just gonna sell that home, I'm gonna move to another country, and I'm just gonna be rich. And that's not gonna be the case at all. In fact, it could be the complete opposite of that. Bubbles, they build up this confidence, and you see exactly the same thing with gamblers. You know, if people have been winning, essentially, they've had these dips in the markets that they've seen before, and they've thought, I've ridden out those dips before and nothing's happened, but they don't realize the Canadian economy is much worse off than the US economy. Canada is already in a recession. I don't think the US is in a recession yet, but it's definitely heading into a recession. And that is bad news for Canada, because it essentially means that Canada is ahead of the US this time, whereas they were behind before. So by the time the Fed cuts rates and the Bank of Canada is cutting rates, which will probably happen in the future, going to be much further down the line when you're going to see that happen. So eventually when you see rates come down, it's going to be too late. Even if they started cutting right now, it would be too late. That's the thing that people don't realize. People are hoping for these rate cuts. They don't realize when those rate cuts come, that's going to mean the opposite of what they want, which is a signal to buy. That's essentially when we're going to see capitulation in the market. That's when you get people trying to catch a falling knife, essentially, which has happened over the past 6 to 12 months in Canada. I mean, just think about it, guys. Last year, I predicted in June of 2022 that we were going to see a bull trap in 2023. So the thing is, a lot of people think that prices go down in a straight line. Like when a crash happens, it's just going to crash and it's just going to go down in a straight line. So after you have like a drop in prices, substantial drop in prices, this could be real estate, it could be a stock, it doesn't really matter. The human emotions are exactly the same. So the thing is, guys, the denial phase is that phase where prices sell off and then people think it's not over yet. What happens is it then falls further. So you get another burst and then it falls further. And people think, oh my God, that is when you get the panic. That is when you get the fear. Because all those people that bought in that denial phase, now they are thinking, wow, I really shouldn't have bought. And a lot of those people would have had a bad feeling at the time when they bought, because that is exactly what we saw in 2023. I prepared you for that. Now, the time ahead, it gets really hard to predict what's going to happen, even using probabilities, because you have to realize that the government is just so stupid, and the stupidity in government, you cannot predict what next move they're going to make. It's just impossible. And I hope my opinion helps educate you, helps you see things in a different perspective, which can help you. I don't want you to think of me as any kind of expert, because believe me, I'm not an expert. But you, like me, should listen to myself and other people and then look at the data as well, and then kind of make a decision based off that. Don't just look at one person. What is a doom loop? A doom loop essentially is this self-reinforcing cycle that you generally get when you're heading into a depression or a recession. But But the problem is it makes things much worse, at least in the short term. And I believe that is exactly the sort of scenario that we're getting into here in 2023. We're coming into a doom loop. So essentially what a doom loop is, it's when you have unemployment, which then leads to more pressure on the economy through things like the housing market, because the housing market has become so financialized here in Canada that essentially it means that when the housing market goes down, it actually impacts the economy negatively. So when that happens, you have more people that lose jobs. And when more people lose jobs, what happens then? You essentially have more pressure on the economy through the housing market, because guess what? People haven't got these high-paying jobs anymore, so it means more problems. So you can see how this is a self-reinforcing cycle. You have people losing jobs, puts pressure on the housing market. The housing market puts pressure on the economy. People lose more jobs, and it goes round and round and round. You don't realize how many people make a living off the housing market. People think it's just people who work directly selling properties and real estate, the real estate brokerages. You go to Calgary, you can look at the economy and you can pretty much see the economy is just real estate, because you look around every single billboard or bench or advertising opportunity. Who is advertising? Real estate agents. When we've driven throughout the US, I've seen very different things. When we got to Salt Lake City, which is in a real estate bubble, we saw a lot of the adverts, they changed to real estate agents. But before that, when we were going through loads of small different towns and cities in Idaho and Montana, it wasn't the same thing. We didn't see all these adverts for real estate. Real estate is a big part of the economy. It's not just real estate agents, it's lawyers, it's people who work in construction, it's people who work for the banks in finance, all the back-end operations of the bank. So there's so much more, and it's over 40% dependency on real estate related activities. It's also all the people who come in and fix your home. You don't want to renovate a house when the housing market and the home price is going down. When the home value is going down, you don't want to do renovations. You don't want to fix up the kitchen. You don't want to expand your deck, because you don't feel good about your property. You're just going to lose all that money and some, essentially. So it's really interesting when that happens, the mentality shifts, and that's exactly what we're seeing. I've seen it in the comments on this channel many times. Many of you business owners who say, Luke, I work as a plumber, I do decks for people, I do kitchens for people, and my business has really slowed down. If you've enjoyed this video, you might like this video here, you might like this playlist that I've got for you here. And if you want to help support the channel, go to patreon.com/marketmania. If you're looking for a VPN, which you desperately need because of Bill C11, go to expressvpn.com/marketmania for their best offer, and that's my VPN provider, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care. Bye.